Well, welcome everyone. This is PNSQC's February meetup. Where this month's theme is going to be about job hiring. My particular story. So I'm also the presenter, or one of the presenters today, which doesn't normally happen, but I had a particular experience that I wanted to share from the employer side. So I'll be both your host and your presenter today, or at least until Heather comes up. But yeah, I'm excited that you're all here. Um, just turn on my mouse so that I can click forward. Uh, for those who this is their first time or hadn't heard of PNSQC before, we're a nonprofit organization. We're run solely by volunteers, and we provide education basically on anything related to software quality. Founded in 1982, so this is our 44th year, and we talk about all things software quality, whether that's traditional software or quality engineering, technical processes, management leadership, enterprise IT, AI, of course, a big topic, which you'll see a lot of from PNSQC this year, hopefully. But we focus on the speakers focus on their own hands-on experience. Um, and we have a main annual conference in October, and then we have every month one of these free meetups that I hope you continue to come to. Um, there we go. All right, so the agenda. So basically, the first part's already done with the networking and the food and drink and stuff, and so my presentation is about 40 minutes, and then yours is probably another half an hour. So about an hour of presentation and some Q&A, and then just a couple of and final thoughts at the end. But I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my presentation now and get started in 1 second. Screen again. Well, good enough. All right. All right. All right. So I've titled my talk "The Paradox of Plenty," and that's because I'm a QA manager for a small startup, and I'm struggled to find basically the perfect hire in an endless sea of candidates last summer, and so this is kind of my story about how you would expect when you have a lot of candidates to choose from. It's sucks for the job seeker, but it must be wonderful for the employer who's got plenty to choose from. But as you can see, AI in this photo that I've got here is made things a little bit more complicated, for better or for worse, and it's probably also you've jumped to thinking like, why is the job market so bad? And so I'm here to give you an account of from the employer's perspective about what the job market it looks like for tech in 2025 and 2026, and hopefully some points that I present you can kind of glean from, even though it's from the employer side, and using your own jobs. When looking for jobs, you can use these tips to help you and beat this AI monster. So, next slide. There we go. All right. So, did it not transition? Why is it not transitioning? Oh, now it's transitioning. Sorry about that. If I do this, it's not transitioning. Okay, let me try. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
Could be Gemini trying to talk in the corner there.
Oh yeah. Why is it not?
Is this lagging?
Let's try this. If I do this and then if I come back here, does it work?
Always say when stuff goes
Okay,
wrong.
there we go. We'll just do that. Now that will be good enough. So a little bit about me, Jeremy. Obviously, as I said a million times now, I've been living in the Portland area for like the last 15 years. Been doing some form of QA for about the last 9 years, and then I've been assisting PNSQC with events like this for about 3 years now. So this is actually the first time I've given a talk for PNSQC, so pretty excited about that. Um, I love my cats. It's another little factoid about me. I know people love sharing their pets, so these are mine. They're a bonded pair, and I call them my work disruptors, as you can see. Um, and then one other fun fact about me is I love orienteering, and it's not a very well heard of sport. It's called the thinking sport, and essentially, if you haven't heard of it, you use a detailed map to try and find like the quickest route through a series of marked checkpoints, and you can either walk to them or you can do it at a nice jog. It's really up to you to enjoy the sport and finding the most efficient route, as you can see in the image I have here. And then in the Pacific Northwest, there's the Columbia River Orienting Club that offers events like this all year round. So if that sounds interesting to you, recommend checking them out. Go to the next slide. All right, so why is it so hard for a job seeker or employee to find a good job? Not just any job, but a good job in the field of QA. Well, the get rich quick scheme it's not new. We've got an influx of traditional college graduates with a degree in computer science and something akin to it. We've also got the coding boot campers. I looked up and it looked like there were about 70,000 the past year, with like a 12% year-on-year growth. So it's a lot. It really is lagging there. But degrees, they don't equal experience. These programs often lack any practical coursework or job shadowing, and they can focus pretty heavily on either academic theory or unrealistic experiences that don't really teach problem solving. And so an example of that is you have tons of people who like code their own websites and as like one of their first projects, but that's not necessarily as super like it doesn't prove that you can architect any technical solution. Uh, we also can zoom out and you'll see that we've got a lot of competition now in offshore and even near shore. And maybe they're not as well educated or easy to communicate with because of like language and time zone cultural differences. There's one significant benefit that they've got, which obviously is money. Like it's relatively cheap cost of labor. But some companies have gotten pretty smart with near shore hiring instead of offshore, like Brazil and Argentina. And, that they are able to keep salaries low, but able to work um, pretty well, both on a time zone perspective and just general communication. But humans are one thing, but then there's also AI, and so you could just employ AI and cut out a whole bunch of jobs and not have to worry about human resources for those people for benefits. It's an even bigger cost savings, and it can't eliminate every job position, and it has to be used correctly. But you can't, even with that, you can't deny it's had some level of impact on new hiring decisions, especially for junior hires. And then, of course, we've got tons of layoffs, whether that's a company that's gone bankrupt or on hard times or just more corporate greed to appease shareholders. It feels like every week we're hearing about like the next startup going bankrupt or that large tech company eliminating tens of thousands of positions. And the humans that are affected by this just add to that growing candidate pool. And it just makes the search much harder. So I could be talking about the job market for candidates all day, but that's not the point of this presentation. I argue that there's also an employer problem as well, and I don't think it gets the recognition it deserves. And it surprised me and fuels the story that I'm about to tell. It's become a burden, at least in my perspective, to actually hire for the spots that we need, which ranges from a bunch of different causes, whether that's defeated or careless applications when trying to compete in this job market, or tools that inhibit rather than empower the employee to find talent. And it really just is compounded by a dramatic rate in the applications submitted. So I break it down, as you can see, into four key components. We've got the applicants, the ATS, the resume, and the interview. And I'll go one by one so that you can better understand why these are problems and what I had to do to make my search successful. So start with the applicants. I didn't intentionally do this when I put this backdrop photo in, but I find it a little funny that the little red guy is like covered up a bit by the title card. It's like, I'm here if you can find me, but the candidate that you're looking for is not quite easy to find. But before I get into it, there's probably some background information I should give about me and the company. So I work for a company called Snippet Century. It's a very small startup. We essentially provide a product that monitors, captures, and archives text messages like SMS, RCS, iMessages, WhatsApp. And then we upload that to cloud providers like Google Cloud Project or AWS or other storage like solutions like SFTP or email. So at the time when we recruited for our hire, we had about 20 people in the company. About 5 or 6 of us do something tangential to software engineering. So like a DevOps, full stack engineer, lead QA, tool scripter, stuff like that. We augment about a similar number of positions with an offshore contractor. It's not my decision, but that's what we do. And then we're also fully remote. So there's only a physical address for mail, but everyone works distributed across the US. I'm the only QA engineer, at least at the time of when I was doing the job search. So I acted as the hiring manager, the recruiter, the assessment administrator, and so on. It was like a one-man show, and I mean, the only involvement the rest of the team had was just an interview towards the end. But otherwise, I had to take everything from jobs or applications that were submitted all the way to the end. So this occurred around May to June. That was about the time frame of last year. I know it's a little old, but I think it's still probably pretty the same environment, and is probably very similar right now. And this was for just a standard QA automation engineer role, and I've got the picture of the responsibilities and requirements there. And it would be just for have one direct report. So we needed someone who could do manual and automated testing. The tools that we use commonly are Playwright, Moped, and then there's something called Pactum.js for testing the API backend. Remember Pactum.js, because I will come back to that later. I have to click here. There we go. And so, yeah, our tech stack is mostly JavaScript and TypeScript. There's one project that's in Python, but that's for the most part our tech stack. And then I was looking for someone who had at least 3 years of experience, maybe somewhere 3 to 5 or so. and I wasn't sure if it was more than 5 years if we'd be able to afford their salaries. So that was kind of the range. And then for the recruitment pipeline, we posted it anywhere in the United States as a remote position. LinkedIn was our primary source of applications with easy reply enabled, but to kind of counteract that, I required not just a resume, but also a cover letter to be uploaded, which I did look at. I looked at both of them. People like to upload both their resume and just fill in that field, but I was paying attention. And this is a little tangential aside. It doesn't really fit in well anywhere else, but I like to see PDF documents when they're uploaded, not regular doc file extensions for those fields, because it's really hard to actually open up docs on a Mac OS machine when you have pages or you don't pay for Microsoft Office. So that's my preference. And then I'll move on. And then the pipeline was, we started with an interview, just myself and the candidate for about 30 minutes. Then it moved on to a technical assessment that I gave them. And that was to prove that they could actually do the work. And then the interview with the rest of our technical team. And then finally an executive interview with our CTO and CEO to make sure they were on board with the choice that I was about to make. Something that's really important to me, which I harp on a little bit throughout this presentation, is that it was really important to me that everyone had a chance when they applied, that there was some level of effort on my part to make sure that they were kept in mind. I wanted to live that experience the whole way through. And because I know as a job seeker myself many times that it's a very difficult position to be in, and it's weird and confusing, especially when you're ghosted and not understood. People don't pay enough attention to your resume. So it's a human process is what I'm trying to get at, and it's not just a machine with the ATS. And I just firmly believe that we deserve better, and it's better than like generic reactions and quick biases like that. So applicants, who wants to take a guess as to how many people actually applied?
Over 200.
Or about 1,000.
A little much. It was 1,290 applicants who ended up applying for this one position. So about 400 on the first day, 850 within 48 hours. I identified about 130 people that I would be willing or wanted to do a 30-minute interview with. That's obviously inhumane. So so it ended up being only 35 people, but even that kind of seriously pushed my limits with back-to-back interviews. I'm not kidding about that. Over 8 hours back-to-back for 3 days. These candidates happened to be within the first 24 hours of the post going live. That was really the only way I could filter it from that 130 down to 35. And from there, I picked about 20 for the assessment, and I couldn't offer my team more than 7 people for an hour-long interview. So we had 7 hours of that kind of interview, and then about 3 or 4 people made it to the CTO CEO level, and then I picked one person from there. So how did I get from 1,290 people to one? Well, you're probably thinking I'm not actually looking at all 1,290 applications. That would be a waste of time. And to some extent, you're probably right, but I'm also here to tell you that I kind of did. And I spent 2 weeks, my full workday, just nonstop looking over each resume. And I'll get into the specifics of why and how I did that when I talk about the ATS in a bit. So what did the people look like? If I want to break that down, I would say there's like 3 classifications of candidates. The first one I have called the noise. This is the vast majority of applicants. We've got people who are applying globally from all across the world, but clearly not the United States. They request a work visa in their resume, or they specify an international phone number. We've got people that have pretty bad resumes, and I'll get into that a little bit. But suffice to say, they're pretty long and painful to read through. We've got people who submit resumes that just are very generic. There's nothing really special about them. Basic job descriptions, generic skills. They're not. It doesn't really seem to me like they're capable of taking on ownership of work, and they'll need things handed to them, and that's usually fine, I would suppose, for a large company like Amazon or Google level. But for a small startup, that's just not something that we can handle with such a tight budget and having to monitor someone. So most of the problems I just described kind of are mixed throughout this 85%. That's about 1,000, a little over 1,000 applications that were just tossed away. And you would think, well, you'd hope the applicant tracking system, or the ATS, would do that work for me, but well, we'll get into that. And the next classification, I would say, is like a wrong fit. This was the smallest percentage. These people were very well qualified as like traditional software developers or engineers, but they were not a good fit for the actual QA position. It was a little confusing why they applied. I think probably it was like a spam and pray tactic to try and just increase the odds of hearing back from someone. But I'm not, it's every application is not guaranteed to be selected just because it exists. Like maybe because the market is so bad, they just wanted to get their foot in the door. But yeah, so there were also a couple of people that were a little out there. Like I had a couple of weird experiences with a couple of candidates, but I don't have time to talk about that part. But if you're interested in that, it can connect with me later. More than happy to share examples of people freaking out over email. So that leaves us with about 10% of people. So these are well qualified people, the 130 that I previously mentioned. And there were a couple of unicorns in there, a couple of people that were referred to me by colleagues. The vast majority was just good submissions for the most part, straight from LinkedIn. These people cared about, QA, cared about, we're a good match for the position. And they even went above and beyond in most cases. They had like 7, 10, 20, 25 years of experience. And that's not an outlier thing either. It was very common to have people that were not necessarily overqualified, but go above and beyond the expectations. And you also have to consider folks that live in particular different states that have a better cost of living advantage over other states. They become more attractive to employers like myself. And so that was another advantage that some candidates had over another. And it's really, these problems it's just a big problem overall, because you end up with 130 people that deserve a chance, but there's just a lack of resources for me to do a full due diligence for each person. There's only one person at the end who's going to be successful. Uh, so yes, so you interrupted.
One person online pointed out that some people apply for jobs so that they can remain eligible for unemployment. Is you have to do that. That's so that you're doing that.
That's true, but I would argue there's so many. Well, I wouldn't say there's so many, but there's enough job postings that I would say you could apply for something a little bit more relevant to what you're looking for. At least that's what I did when I was filing for unemployment. So I'm going to talk now about the ATS. This is supposed to help with managing this 1,290 applicant situation and help me find the best candidates and rank them. So this picture is a real picture of what it looked like for me. We used a tool called Workable. It's one of the more popular ATSs out there. You can see that there are tabs at the top that let me go through the pipeline for those who are sourced versus applied and phone screen and so on. We also have all the candidates there on that little sticky sidebar. And each candidate, I can click on them. I can view their full profiles. You can see for that person, their work experience. They've got their resume. If you scroll down a bit, you can see their resume. It's embedded within the details page, so I don't have to open up the PDF in a separate application. They try to extract. Workable tries to extract from this resume all the details, as you can see. So all the details there, they're pulled from that resume file, and they do a pretty good job. Even the poorly formatted ones, they do a pretty good job of getting the name and the demographics and the work experience out. But I still enjoy looking at a good resume. That you put time into making a resume. And sometimes it would get things a little weird or wrong. So I always scroll down to read the PDF for whatever file they uploaded. And the final thing I'll mention is that there was a AI match score. You can see it right there in the middle of the picture. When I was going through the hiring process, the scores would be on the left sticky bar as well. But this was after the hiring process was done. But that score is the AI match that Workable thinks the candidate how much of a match they are. And so I'll talk more about that score in just a moment. So the ways to filter candidates in Workable, you can sort it by submitted date, ascending or descending. You can sort it by the AI match score that I just mentioned, highest to lowest. And you can sort it by keyword to filter out results that they have somewhere in their profile. And I mean keyword, not keywords. And that was really frustrating. I have no idea why they wouldn't let me put in multiple qualifications there, but that's about it. That was all I could do with this tool. This is all I had to work with to sort through 1,290 applications, and I wish that I could sort by user experience. Like, I wish that was a thing that I could have done. I wish that I could have done by location, put in multiple keywords and parameters. It knows this stuff is the most frustrating part. Like, it knows where the person is coming, where because they put their location in the resume. It knows these things, and yet it won't let me put in multiple parameters or sort by those things or put in filters to get rid of those things in Workable. So that was really frustrating. I really don't get why Workable does that. It might not be like that for other ATSs, but for Workable, which is a pretty popular ATS, I'm pretty sure a good chunk of recruiters are dealing with this problem if I dealt with it. I'm assuming the reason has to be because Workable wants to make the process really simple, like dumb down the process, make it really easy. Just go off that AI score to find your candidate, take all the work out of it, and I don't particularly like that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that AI match score. So how is it calculating this score, you might ask? Like, how it's got all the data at its fingertips. It's analyzing it. It's looking for those best matches, but the scores were wrong. They were just plain wrong. And my top candidates, they got scores from between 33 to 39 out of 100. And I interviewed good candidates with scores as low as 20. And my hire coincidentally had a score of 61, which was pretty good, but that's considered a failing grade. So, like, it's much higher than the average good candidate, but it's still not great. So I don't really know what their criteria is. If I had to take a really good guess, it's going to be keyword stuffing, as you might assume. You can see this with candidates that try to game the system and just stuff every keyword in, and it will get their score to go up. As you can imagine, they'll put it in their resume, their cover letter. I really don't blame them because it works. It works for Workable. I assume it works for the others as well. So it also is something that the recruiter is going to be relying on if they don't have the time or patience to go through this process as I just described, with not having the tools, filtering tools in place. So I determined that it was basically anyone who had a score of 80 or above was going to be someone who did some keyword stuffing or used AI to write their resume. And the way that I knew that they were using AI and associated that with the 80 or above score was because, as I mentioned, Pactum.js, that package that has like 600 downloads on GitHub for end-to-end API testing, that was suddenly plastered across dozens and dozens of resumes. And, they said that they'd been working with it for like 3-5 years at their last company. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure they're not actually perfect for me, and it was a fun and novel way of disqualifying people. But that was one that I had to do myself and work against the score. So I didn't really use the AI match to make a decision in this case. So other dumb ATS things. We have a space to specify salary range and expectations, but I discovered it doesn't actually go to LinkedIn. I think it went to Indeed and some other platforms, but the most important one can't do that. It doesn't get the paid, so there's no paid transparency, even if you want there to be on LinkedIn. I didn't get noticed when there were duplicate applications, which was baffling. They've got the same email address, they've same name, email address, resume, and the tool never alerted me that that the person had submitted multiple times, even for the same like through LinkedIn multiple times versus like on LinkedIn or on Indeed and different platforms. And so there was a couple of cases where I just emailed someone multiple times by accident because I didn't catch it. So that sucked. We also it was a really bad auto rejection experience. So if you're not familiar, or I assume you all's someone's not writing a rejection email for every single person. That would be a huge pain in the ass to do. But yes.
There's a question online. What was the largest number for duplicates from the same person?
I think it was just 2 or 3. It's still like 2 is still too much. So anyways, about the auto rejection, it was unnecessarily convoluted to set up the auto rejection emails. And you also are punished if you don't do it before setting up the job requisition, and you have to be a full admin of the tool to properly set them up. So I didn't discover that until it was too late, and then I ended up having to do weird things with bulk emails and stuff to get through that problem. And then the other weird thing that there was you can't have people automatically move to be auto rejected as well unless you use some deterministic custom question. And I emphasize custom questions. So like if I ask if they've used TypeScript before, they answer no, but I'm looking for the answer yes. You can't set up auto rejections for system level fields like years of experience, locations, keywords that I want to put in. Like you can't do any of that. And then sending those emails upon rejection, if you hadn't set it up properly, and if you don't have it go for this auto rejection system before the email goes out, you can't use a no reply email. So you have to use your personal work email for some weird reason. So I had about 100 people before I discovered that problem get my personal email. And that's where I got some weird responses. So at best they were like thank you emails, and at worst they were pretty bad. So let's move on to the resume. So I've talked enough about the ATS. So I used the resume because the ATS couldn't filter out candidates. That was how I filtered them out myself. I don't trust the ATS, frankly, and so this is a typical, very typical resume that I got. It's got a bunch of weird colors and formatting errors, grammar errors, inconsistency, bad spelling. The logos, the certification logos at the top, they're not. I don't believe anyone in the United States actually cares about them. I think that's more of an international thing. But yeah, was weird. Okay, there we go. So another resume, I'm going to go through some more details on the bullet point part, and I also circled them in red some areas that I didn't particularly like for one reason or another. This is several hundred of these, by the way, that I had to look through in a week. So endless bullet points, like that's not even, there was more than just that page, like an endless set of bullet points of what they've done, ironically titled summary for the actual job description. A numerous amount of tasks they've done, but no clarity into how experienced that they are with any of them. A lack of effort to properly capitalize like proper nouns and tools. That there's tons of proofreading reading that could have been done to improve this. Also turns out that the average resume length that people submitted was about 4 pages. And that's twice the recommended, at least in my opinion, and I would say pretty consensus wide, twice the recommended amount of pages you should have for someone who's got more than a decade of experience. So, if they need that at like extra page, where I would argue, I think 1 page is plenty. So a dozen people went up to about 11 pages, and then there was one person who submitted a 28-page.
CD, not a resume.
That's beyond a CD. That's just wasting my time. So yeah, he stood out in the wrong way. You can't boil it down to like 2 to 3 max pages, but 1 ideally. 3 to 5 bullet points per each job. You don't know how to be succinct about your experience and tailor yourself to the job you're applying for. So there is one more thing I wanted to point out that's actually something I did like, which is the bolding. And this is a little controversial in different circles. Some people think that it's tacky, others love it because it really helps see, pick out key details when you're skimming over resumes. And I'm in that camp. I particularly like seeing the bolded keywords, but I can see both sides of the argument. There's just a lack of time really to read through all of these bullet points. And just want to see what the top keywords, or at least what they think the top keywords are, if the ATS isn't going to do it for me. So
in the ones back there, some of the things that you highlighted were like restful. You thought it should be rest and then lowercase full or something. Is that?
Yeah, that's not restful, and all caps is not.
And then the having around 7 years, like they don't know how many years they actually have for experience.
It's a little weird. That's just bad grammar, I think.
Yeah, even the things that you haven't highlighted, there are some things that just don't make a lot of sense. Like the ETL one says Informatica graphs, test all the functionality of all the things. It seems kind of weird.
Yeah. So it's clear that the resume that was submitted is just a spam and pray resume. No tailoring, and it's not really, English might not be their second language, but they didn't put in effort to make sure that it was well polished. And you expect that as a QA engineer to have a very well polished, high quality resume. But so yeah, that was the noise that I committed myself to having to review. And again, because I believe everyone deserves a chance. And there's no way for me to have known, even though these resumes were rough and careless, there's no way I could have known that they were without spending 5 or 10 seconds per applicant to get to that resume and make that quick decision. But you take 5 to 10, 7.5 seconds on average, you multiply that by 1,290. That's over 3 hours of time just to do the bare minimum. And that assumes no breaks, but I took breaks, don't worry. Yeah, so and then I would say about 100 of them I spent like a disproportionately longer amount of time with because they moved through the pool or I was on the fence about it at some point in the process. So there's a lot of time just looking at these resumes. And to make decisions under such a tight, strict budget of time requires me to make some hasty or assumptive decisions. And there's no doubt there were dozens of people who I had to reject that would have been great candidates if I gave them the chance. Like some people who submitted, they just didn't have the language or tools that we use. But that doesn't necessarily make you unqualified. You can teach people that have really good problem solving skills and other QA skills, how to use Playwright or TypeScript or whatever. But there's really no wiggle room when you've got so many candidates that have already have those skills and look like they're good QA engineers and problem solvers. Like for a large company like Amazon, maybe it's okay to have all these easy rejections, but it made me feel guilty about it at the end of the day because it has real life implications for people, and it just adds to people failing to get their foot in the door. I hated having to contribute to that. So in order to try not to be one of those people, here are some tips. I'm going to start to get a little bit more positive now. Here are some tips about what you can do with your resume. This resume is actually from one of my finalists, not the person that I hired, but one of the top 3 people. It's a clean 1-page resume. It tells me what they're most passionate about. QA tells me about his specific experience. And expertise. He also mentioned small, close-knit teams, which is perfect for a startup. He's got a business casual tone. It feels pretty fresh, not out of place. They've got their skills organized and listed. It helped me and the ATS find them. His work experience was strictly 4 bullet points per job. The bullet points were a little bit weak, if I had to be honest. They could have done a little bit better job tying back to business impact, but I at least knew what the most important bits of the work that he was doing, the technical skills he was using. And one thing in particular about this candidate that no other candidate did in that C of 1,290 was he actually had his own personal GitHub set of repositories that had actual QA automation projects on them, that actually demonstrated different QA tools, frameworks that he had built, and little tests that he was able to run. And that blew me away because that made all the complaints I had about the bullet points kind of like I ignored them at that point because he proved to me that he knew what he was talking about. Done because I had an actual example of it. So yeah, I don't have time to talk more about resume tips, but I will have a website at the very end that will give you a really good resource for recommendations for what to do with your resume.
There's one question from online.
Yes.
Did they clear that? I wasn't sure which part.
Yeah,
Clear what?
So one of the reasons that I, for instance, couldn't post.
Oh no, these were from scratch. These were not from employers. These were from scratch projects. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, because I couldn't post any of my work because it's all under NDA.
No, these were things that he just made from his free time, or just made work from just playing around with tools and with his personal website. Like it wasn't anything that he took from a previous job. So yes.
One thing that I recently heard that was a really good advice to me is what to do. Take that 28-page resume that you do have. You might have a ton of experience that can fill 28 pages. Keep it. Don't toss it. And then from those 28 pages, take the sections that apply to the job that you're applying to and cut it down to 1 or 2 pages.
Base resume
28 pages.
is the base.
If you didn't hear what Beat said, she said take the 28 pages that you might have for your resume or all the experience that you've got and pick and choose the most important things to make that 1 or 2 page resume. So I'm gonna go ahead and move on because we are running a little bit over time. So I'm gonna go as quickly as I can for this last part, the interview stage. I kind of lump all the post-submission stuff together here. So, but I'm gonna focus the most on the take-home technical assessment I provided to the candidates. And in the background here is what it looked like, or a snippet of what I sent to them. With the screenshot. In the screenshot is of our actual product, and the particular page I wanted them to test, both with a manual and an automation test there. So it helps me actually weed out people who really sell that they can code in the interview, but I want to actually see that they can with a quick project. So it was a two-part test, as I said. Well, part 1 was the manual exploratory part, write some test cases that without any product requirements, just what would you do if you were handed this feature? How would you test it? And then automate a subset of those cases with a UI automation framework of their choice and programming language of their choice. Proves that you can problem solve, work from scratch, and that you have the technical skills to do the job. So I also have ideas for how you can handle doing an assessment like this in an interview live, but I don't have time to talk about that. So you can connect with me afterwards if you want to discuss that. So the criteria that I looked for, how did I get from 20 people here to about 5 to 7? How do I do that in a fair and objective manner without wasting time, evaluating the solution? These were the criteria that I came up with. First, did you follow the instructions? And that sounds obvious, like you follow the instructions that were given, and most people did follow the instructions, but it was not a guarantee. We had a couple candidates that half read the instructions. They saw write test case code in a text document when I asked for a full automation framework, or they thought when I said to write tests about these credit operations that I actually meant to write test cases about whatever you see on the page. And that's not the same thing. So they would include things that had nothing to do with the feature, but it was, the nav bar and the other stuff on the side that I didn't care about. So making bad assumptions like this is just not good. You should email if you need some clarification, if you don't fully understand. The reason why this was so important to me is because in a startup, if I'm leaving you to be very independent, you could quickly go off the rails, off the path, waste cycles when it's finally discovered that you didn't actually do the thing that you were instructed to do. So we move on then to the manual test cases. We've got presentation. That was obviously important. You can't communicate on paper for a remote job. There's no way you're going to be able to handle that kind of working relationship. I spent more time trying to make sense of the organization than I was spending more time to make sense of the organization of the artifact that was given to me than the actual test cases. That was a problem. I needed the engineers who had good test case choices. So they looked at like the bigger picture, not like unit tests are really in the weeds. For example, we had a test. I was expecting a test case of someone to make like a new user, for instance, for that page. They would write a test case for submitting the first name and then going through all the same steps, and then a test case for making sure the last name was saved, and a test case for making sure the phone number was saved. But that flow literally has all those fields in one place, and the API call uses all those fields. So it was just a waste of time to write them out as particular test cases one at a time. And then I was also interested in people who had more out of the box ideas, like they could discover that you can't modify or delete your own user record, or if you saw the picture before, there were like little crown icons next to each user, and figuring out what those crown icons meant and how you make them show up. So then we get to the automation part. Again, instructions, README. I want a good README from the candidate that's going to let me run and verify their tests, their automation tests. Many people chose not to provide anything there, and the few who did provided stuff focused on the architecture of the framework, which is good. I appreciate that, but I care more about knowing how to set up and run the tests. You shouldn't assume that I know what to do, especially if I've never used that programming language or framework before. This next one shouldn't come as a surprise. Do they pass or fail? If they're passing, how egregious is the mistake? Is it a complete failure because the code is just so poorly written, or is it a partial failure because there was just one mistake that was made in the test case? The reasons for failure, they were all over the place. They were unique for the solution, but I did commonly see people hard coding in information like their own personal credentials for logging in and other test data that I wouldn't have access to, or they've run the tests and it puts their stuff in an unexpected state, and so you can't run them again. So there was problems like that. I wanted to see people who had smart language choices. These next criteria, by the way, they're a little bit more nuanced and subjective, but they had some impact on my decision. If they chose JavaScript because they know that we work in JavaScript at the company, or it's what they know best, they use the language efficiently. Are they using ES6 versus CommonJS, which is basically just a different way of writing in JavaScript if you're not familiar with that language, a more modern way. And were they familiar with TypeScript, or did they just write everything without doing any typing or without using their IDE to enforce any sort of rules on the code that they were writing, or any formatting? And this doesn't just necessarily apply to JavaScript. This could apply to using new versions of Java or Python, utilizing third-party packages and libraries efficiently. But if they did pick TypeScript and Playwright, obviously that's going to be a bonus. That's what I worked with. I did also appreciate people who chose this, even if they hadn't worked in it before, because it shows that they put in a level of effort. I gave them a little bit benefit of the doubt because of the effort they put in, as long as it wasn't significantly worse than what they would have given me if they had actually chosen to use the language they were most comfortable with. So then we get to architecture. Do they use a page object model to encapsulate their pages and keep the case code focused on the user actions? Do they bundle everything together into one file, so I had to scroll around to figure out what did what? It's not easy to read or maintain that. So utilize some sort of architecture to separate different roles of code, please. Locator selector strategies, were they using array accessibility roles? Were they using if they were using XPath, were they smart relative locators, or were these just very long absolute path brittle CSS selectors or XPath selectors that are going to break if one single change is made to the layout of a web page? And even though it's the easiest thing to copy and paste, it doesn't make it that doesn't put you up for long-term sustainability. Yes.
Probably be 5 minutes or less.
Okay. I'm going to just put all this, so test work usage, smart usage of fixtures and hooks, error handling, and then stability and reusability. Those were all things that I cared about. I want to talk briefly about behavioral questions. I saved them for last, but they're still very important. If there's anything you take away from this part, as an interviewer, ask questions that actually connect to a real experience, not a hypothetical answer that, don't allow a hypothetical answer to be created. So for example, if you ask me how well I work in an agile team, I can tell you all the things that relate to agile that sound good. Like, I'm open to changing priorities, getting work done efficiently, communicating with my teammates, stuff like that. But have you actually done that in practice? What about when it doesn't work? And there are times where that doesn't work, even though it's the most common way of working. What did you do in those situations when it didn't work? That's a way more interesting story to me than only someone who's lived in that environment can answer. I know. Questions that I've asked, so that I asked to support that philosophy. Favorite accomplishment, like instead of just reciting the same resume that I've already read, actually tell me a little bit about your favorite accomplishment on your resume so that there's something that I know what I should pay extra attention to that's meaningful. Balancing quality with delivery. I don't want someone who's gonna hold back everything just because it's not 100% perfect, but I also don't want people pushing out stuff quickly as possible. So I like to see a balance. So I ask about bug that has been discovered before a deadline and what you would do to triage that and communicate that. We've got no documentation. If you were put into the company, and this is typically my experience anyways, and there's no documentation for processes or any QA test cases, what would you do? Want to see some self-starter behavior. Missing a bug. So if you make a mistake, letting a bug go into production, what kind of experience have you had? I hope you've had something like that in your career, and how did you handle it? If you're willing to disagree, which is a fun one, I want someone who's going to have opinions, especially at a startup where there's not many people, and it's not someone who's scared to voice their thoughts, even if I'm their direct report. And then why this role in company, which is a very common one, but I still think it's very important to ask that. And I would say don't look for answers where it's like the company's doing well, or you're building a great cool product. I want to see things like what about the company that you want to know more about, like its size or environment or culture. What technical skills can we provide? Something that makes it clear that you've done your research. So to wrap it up, ignore the noise. Job seekers, they should put in the evidence. They should put in the effort. Don't be the noise. Put in the effort, even when it feels like it's pointless too. There's someone out there like myself who still cares about this stuff, as I've just talked about for the last 50 or so minutes. So, it's important, and believe in a better future. I know that for those who are looking for a job right now, it feels really hard. You have to stay optimistic during this. Even if things aren't working today, they might randomly work tomorrow. You just got to keep growing your skills and find ways to demonstrate them in your application to increase your odds. And if there's someone else that's faced this similar challenge of finding the right candidate for their company, I'm hope that this presentation has given you some tips. I hope this has helped folks looking for a job have an idea of what I would be looking for. And yeah, that's about it. These are links to images that I used, some of them there. The middle one is linked to that resume resource that I was talking about. It's actually part of our engineering resumes on Reddit. They have a whole bunch of tips, and it's very, very easy to follow their guide and make a whole bunch of good changes. And then you can connect with me on LinkedIn there. And yep, that's it for me.
There's one. Oh, go ahead. We can clap first. There's one question online. Could you tell us whether the person that was selected
They were not. They came from the LinkedIn. They were not a referral. In fact, I don't even think the final 3 people were referrals. I think maybe there was one in the hour. No, the referrals only made it as far as the technical assessment. Yeah.
I don't get rattled when I talk.
putting your resume together? Someone on Jeremy was saying, maybe 4 or 5 bullet points per job. But someone online was asking, what if you've had the same role at the company, but you work on different long-term projects? Maybe it's a 3-year project.
Not by project.
And then, yeah, so that was what they're asking. How do you put that together? And some of them overlap. So how do you indicate that? So you're thinking by project?
I would bust it out by project, and then that gives you an opportunity, even if some of the stuff overlaps, you can fill in different things from each project, if that makes sense. So for each one, you're not saying, wrote test cases every time. You could say, I wrote a lot of really good test cases for this project. And the next one is, I don't know, I did a banana with a pineapple and it was awesome. That way you can sort of work through and highlight more stuff.
And I ask online for people, how many people are looking for work right now? If you want to, do you want to raise your hand and just kind of indicate it?
I already did that once.
You already did that? Okay.
And I think the question is, the easier question to ask is who's not looking.
Yeah, okay, that's what I ended up doing.
Yeah.
And one other question is who is being encouraged by getting to the first interview? Raise your hand. Okay, so some, maybe half are encouraged by getting to the first interview. Okay. Because online people are saying like, 100 resume submitted in one interview, something like that.
Yeah. The bummer is getting through the second interview and then getting the second interview, you start to hope. All right. So everybody's back, or enough of us are back. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's see. Couple things. A little bit about me. I've been in the industry for about 30 years. I started in tech support. I've done a whole bunch of things. I've been a configuration manager. I've been an internal, I call it internal services. I changed the soda pop and took care of the servers. So my background is, I actually started, my first job was at Symantec. It was so big, I said never again. And so I worked startups for the next 15 years. And then I discovered QA actually fairly early on. And I've been all the way from a junior all the way through a manager. And actually, this is funny. The fact that I'm giving a talk on how to make your resume good and I'm still unemployed is kind of, I do grasp the irony of that situation. I was a quality engineering manager at a company called HMH. Yeah. It actually worked on my team. So if you want to know if I was a good manager or not, he'll talk smack about me. He doesn't have any problem with that. And over the years, I have survived a lot of layoffs, but obviously not all of them. So I've also read a lot of resumes and I've hired a lot of people, and I've gotten myself hired into a lot of jobs. 5 months is the longest I've ever been unemployed, and that was during the 2008 collapse. I made it through the dot bomb. Yeah. So that's just, I've been through a lot. So yeah. Let's see here. What else do I have to say? Wow. I am. The squirrel has died. Well, Jeremy's.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I can see.
Now we gotta. Okay. So, disclaimer: resumes are variable in nature. There's no right or wrong way to write one. However, some ways are better than others. Anything I say can and will be used against me in the court of opinion. Because regardless of what I say, somebody's going to say, well, I don't do it that way. And quick and dirty, I think I skipped a slide at the very beginning. I should say I sit on the board for PNSQC, as does Moss. Jeremy is someone we refer to as a super volunteer, which is that he's our operations chair. He helps make our website and stuff go. We are always looking for volunteers. That's the pitch. We are always looking for volunteers. PNSQC is great. I know people that have gotten jobs through their contacts at PNSQC. So it's a good way to force yourself to get out into the world without going to one of those creepy mingly things that we all have, they recommend that you go to. This is a little more comfortable. I feel like it's not as creepy of a mingly thing. So anyway, if you're interested, you can go to our website, pnsqc.org. You can reach out to one of us, but we need all kinds of help in all kinds of ways. Also, fun fact, the last time I paid for a PNSQC conference was 2012. I've been a volunteer ever since. And if you volunteer enough, you get into the conference for free. So
T-shirts are nice too.
yeah, and you get groovy t-shirts. So anyway, moving on. There we go. Whoops. The hiring manager challenge. I'm the opposite of Jeremy. My last company, NWA/HMH, was large. I had HR people in front of me. I had HR people in front of me, so I only got 30 or 40 resumes at a time. But we would have upwards of 500 applicants, and this was, the last time I hired was probably 3 years ago, so things have gotten even nuttier since then. And of those 500, 480 were from recruiters, a lot of what I like to call fake candidates, which are recruiters that just throw candidates at you and hope that one of them sticks, which Jeremy touched on a little bit. The resumes that overstated qualifications beyond the normal, our resumes are all a little bit padded, but there's a little bit padded and there's just outright foo. There was a lot of outright foo. And then we've got buzzword bingo words without the backing experience. SQL, I know SQL. Can you write a join? No, you don't know SQL. And there's only so much time to read resumes. Jeremy, bless his toenails, spent a lot more time reading resumes than I ever would. You get 30 seconds from me. If I've got 40 resumes, you're going to get 30 seconds from me, and that's it. So that's the trick, is to get me past those first 30 seconds and make me actually read the rest of your resume. So I need to quickly sort the wheat from the chaff. I also didn't have 2 weeks to look, 8 hours a day. I get 20 minutes here and 20 minutes there. So somewhere in that, you've got to get my attention. So as a hiring manager, what I want to see, it needs to look like a real person wrote it, not a droid. One page that tells me if I want to read more. With the skills for the job you're applying for, I have a personal pet peeve, summary statements at the top. I'm a great person and I do really good work and you really want to hire me. Show me one that says I suck and you've got my attention. Otherwise, you're just repeating stuff that I've already seen 77 times. If you're going to put a summary at the top, it better be marvelous. Stop me in my tracks. But don't tell me that you're smart and, you're smart and you're a good learner. Well, I would hope so. And then put your job experience and the extra stuff on additional pages. If you've made it in front of me and I'm looking at page 1, I'm interested. So you have to hook me on that first page. If I'm interested, I'll read the rest of your resume. But you got to hook me on the first page. I believe it's okay to have 2 pages. What was it, 18 or whatever it was? That's too many. I've been in the business for 30 years. My resume is, I can't remember if it's 3, I think it's 3 pages and a nibble. But, it's hard to encapsulate 30 years in 2 pages. But the other thing is, the experience that's on there had better be relevant because, as I say here, I don't care about your Pizza Hut job when you were 19. I started in tech support, and I'll show you this on my resume. All it says is there's a line that says I was at Symantec, and it says the names of the job I did, and that's it. Because if you're going to hire me as a quality manager, you don't give a banana about my time, telling people how to hook up their modems. It's not relevant anymore. So, fun fact, I can tell you what speed your modem is going to connect by the tones it makes. And then actually, Jeremy pointed this out, correct spelling and grammar, especially for QA folks. Seriously, QA your own resumes. I mean, everybody misses one now and again. But if you've misspelled 19 words in your resume, you clearly didn't read it. All right. And I'm going super duper fast. So if anybody has any questions, put your hands up, stop me, wave your paws. I will notice, I promise. All right. So this is an example of a resume that I looked at. Name has been redacted. This was their first page. That person immediately went into the trash. Anybody tell me why?
I copied it from LinkedIn.
Oh, but they copied it from LinkedIn. It's going to take me 20 minutes. Well, it's going to take me more than 30 seconds to read this. I don't have this kind of time. Plus this little dude here. That's the international symbol for somebody fed that, some recruiter stuffed that in there. So this is a recruiter generated resume, which automatically makes me nervous. This was not generated by a real person.
You mean the icon?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, what is it?
It's just a little bunch of squares blocked
Oh.
together. It's supposed to make it look
Ridiculous.
cute and sweet or something. And it's
No.
all that tells me is that a recruiter ate this. Just for fun, I fed my resume through an AI generator, and this is what I got. I would put me in the trash can too.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I
Columns are-
actually cheated here. I didn't bother to fill out the skills because I wasn't going to read my resume anyway. Garbage. So, but just the way this is laid out, if I was a hiring manager, I'd take one look at this and go, well, this was clearly generated by AI, so now I can't trust it anymore.
Or a template.
Second paragraph.
Or a template.
Oh, templates.
What?
That's-
All right.
We were pushing that format many years ago, and I steered the frick clear of it.
This is my actual resume. Actually, this is not a super recent copy, but this is the format that I use. And whatever job I'm applying for, I lead with. So right now, because I kind of want to be a manager when I grow up, I'm leading with my leadership experience. If I'm applying for a QA job, I'll probably pop testing experience to the top. I have another version of this that has all my governance work at the top. So what this does is this allows somebody that's trying to figure out if they care to read the rest of my resume. You can scan this really quickly and figure out if I'm the guy you're looking for. If I'm not the droid you're looking for, fine, throw me in the wastebasket. But at least if you're looking for me, you'll be able to find me here. And hopefully I'm gonna hook you and you're gonna read the whole rest of my resume. But this is all I got. This is how I'm gonna get hooked, or this is how I'm gonna hook a manager, a hiring manager.
So would page 2 then have for this? Yeah. Sorry.
Funny you should mention that.
Yeah.
So there's my wall of words. And I've broken Jeremy's rule. I actually have paragraphs in here, and now I'm thinking about whether I need to rewrite that. So, but the important thing is lead with the good stuff. This actually will get through an AI, and that it's got the buzzwords in there in some sort of a context. So, and actually the new version of my, I actually have a section in my new resume that actually has software packages all laid out so that you can catch those two really fast. So it's my new resume is slightly less messy, but frankly, I didn't put it up here, and that's my bad. No biscuit for me. I do have my laptop, so if anybody wants to see it, I will show you my resume. All right. So yeah, there's my second page, and then blurps at the end. So this is what I was talking about. There's my Symantec experience. Because if you're hiring me for a manager, I mean, it's a cute fact that I did tech support, but it's not really relevant to the gig. So you should know that after I left graduate school, I was actually gainfully employed for several years. But, and then, yes.
There are two comments from online. One that your first one with all the colors and stuff might be a good resume for a graphic designer.
Yes.
No. Being a designer, I would argue absolutely
Okay.
not. No.
It's a template.
And also,
It is not ATS friendly. Tell them no.
that was the other thing he said was that it'd probably get mangled by the ATS system. So
Yeah, I was just curious what it would look like, and I did it, and I looked at it and said, well, I wouldn't hire me based on this resume. So yeah. And then I've got, my volunteer experience and my published works and whatnot. So, and you can tell this one's out of date because, yeah. Anyway. So that's my resume, and I am really plowing through this because I know you guys have been sitting patiently for a long time. So
That's a 3-pager resume. Or two.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we've talked about a lot of the stuff, tricks. Create a master resume with all the things. A friend of mine has 4 or 5 different resumes that he just, chucks out so that they look custom, but they're really kind of not. It's the happy medium, which allows you to tailor it for specific jobs. Remove the extraneous information, which I already talked about. Leave the job reference, but remove the details. So yeah, your job at doing tech support or whatever. Make it personal, but also conforming. Something that I've noticed is especially if it's a recruiter resume, it looks exactly the same. Everything's worded exactly the same. So you can probably make an argument for at least letting AI write the paragraphs inside your resume, but even then, do you really want to sound like an AI? I would rather sound like me. Make sure keywords are included, but not as a keyword list. Avoid walls of words, says the woman that has the second page of my resume that's a wall of words. And be bold but honest, because if you make the interview and you say, as I said, you're an expert on SQL, and they ask you, and I've been there, they ask you, please write us an SQL join, and you can't, you're going to look like a doofus. And not only are you going to look like a doofus, they're not going to call you back for any other jobs. And they may tell their friends, oh, I interviewed the worst person. Yeah. So got plenty of those stories too. And like I said, let AI help you out, but not too much. Still use your words. I like to feed it through and let it edit my grammar, because I like to use lots of words where fewer will do. Yep. So I let the AI edit my grammar, and then I compare the two, and I'll copy and paste sentences and things. But I don't let AI do all the work. So let's see what else is here. And then I did it. We're ripping through this. Let Dr. Google help you. And Jeremy did a little bit of this too. Search for good resume examples. Actually, I typed in how to write a good resume. It's actually kind of helpful, believe it or not. And make sure the articles are recent, because what was working in 2014 may not work today. I did notice that when I typed in how to write a good resume, it was showing me some of the resumes it was showing me were from back in the day, and that doesn't work anymore. And then Resume Genius, there's a blog there that was really helpful, I found. And then, yeah, My Perfect Resume. I think, yes.
Oh, wow, that was short.
Oh, it's supposed to be longer, but we're kind of running low on time, so I did the fast forward version. This is on being fast forward. So, questions?
I understand that the Oregon Unemployment has resume portals or something that you can run or
Job
scan.
yeah. No.
And they job scan wants you to sign up and pay for it, and it's
No, you can get it for free.
no, I know. I'm just saying
What's the word you're saying?
Okay.
Job scan?
That's
there's other scanning things.
They're okay.
Yeah, there's a ton of, and actually I noticed there's several employment services that, if you feed it your resume, they'll give you I try to remember, I just did it. It wasn't Indeed, but it was one of those services like Indeed that they'll feed your resume through. And I think it was goodjobs.com.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll give you a review of your resume and tell you how good they think it is. And
It's still nice because I had all my stuff in the header, like my contact information. I thought I was a genius. It turns out ATS can't read the headers, even
Oh, right.
it's PDF. And so no one could tell that I had 7 years in games. And I was like, crap.
oh yeah, something that I've noticed, it trips on this. So it gets, for the first, when the ATSs suck in my resume, it gets that I worked at NWEA, and it gets this first gig, and then all the rest of them, it doesn't. I have to go in and write, NWEA Portland, NWEA Portland, a bunch of times, because it just can't figure that out.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, because I worked at NWEA for,
Different job titles, but different.
Yeah.
Same. Gotcha.
I was there for a long, long time.
I'm going to steal that. I worked in publishing, so a lot of different games. And so I might steal that project format.
But know that it's going to choke.
It's bad.
It'll get the contents, which is great, but you're going to have to copy the job title and the company more than.
Almost treat it like
Separate jobs.
So
Yes,
I've done
this is
it
expansion.
where like I have the job and then the title right after it with the date and everything, and then my skill for that, and then the next line isn't a bullet point, it's just another, like, here's the title of what I did and then the time points, and it seems to do okay with that, to break it up and reformat. So that might be something that you try.
Yeah, that's good to know. I did apply one place where it actually sucked in my resume properly.
Thrilled.
I was thrilled, and I was also irritated because it took it took almost 200 resumes, 200 applications for that to happen.
Account for it.
Yeah. So, any other questions or thoughts or?
Do you have a preference for the tech skills section? Jeremy said he kind of liked them.
Oh, tech skills?
Yeah.
Like, as in, should there be a section for that?
Yeah. Oh, that's your whole first page, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
Because like I said, I've only got a few seconds to look through your resume, and I've already had HR's already pruned these down for me. So you got to get by HR, and they're going to use the AI to pick out the resumes it gives me. But once you get to my desk, I still have to go through 30 or 40, and I've got a half an hour to do it. So I need to scan the front page of your resume and figure out if I give a rep enough to keep reading, or if I'm just going to toss you aside and have HR send you a thank you for playing letter. Yes.
Does I include a link to a portfolio site, which a lot of times I post work. I do a lot of projects, code or things like that. I like to put in there sometimes samples of blog posts because my job is writing these things. Is that something you would read after you got me hooked, or?
Well, that's there. In my case, it's talks and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, if I care enough, if you've hooked me, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look through. I've got my pile of resumes. Keep, toss, keep, toss, keep, toss. When I get done with that initial sort, the ones I keep, I'm going to sit and I'm actually going to read through those, and then I actually grade them. I give them an A through F, and I'm going to look at the A's and B's and possibly the C's, and then I'm going to toss the D's and F's. So that's how I do it when I've got a whole massive pile. So yeah, if I'm recruiting for somebody that is going to be an SDET or an automation guy, if you've got something like that in your resume, I'm gonna go look at your stuff, or I'm gonna be rude and give you a coding test. I do that too. I'm that guy. So.
All right. Well, let's give it up for Heather.
Yeah, Brian, go ahead and jump in for just a second. Can you hear me? Hi, Brian. We can hear you, I think.
Okay, yeah, all right. I had a hint that I used when I was looking for a job about 10 years ago. I was having problems because the terminology for a test engineer can be so different. It can be software quality assurance engineer. It can be, a test engineer. It can be a lot of different things. Software test, QA, and likewise for other different words. And I was trying to figure out a way to basically reverse engineer the applicant tracking system so I got better hits with the ATS systems. And what I decided to do was find 5 or 6 different job descriptions for jobs that I thought I was a really good fit for. And I copied the text into a single document and fed it into a word cloud tool. If you recall what those are, it highlights words that are repeated more often. And from that, I was able to pick the words out that were predominant words in the word cloud. And if they were words that should be on my resume, I fit them into the resume and basically reverse engineered the ATS tools. So when you do that, you might find that you get more hits on your resume as well.
That's a good idea.
Huh. Cool, thanks.
If anyone has more questions, I will allow that in just a couple minutes, but I just want to give a little formal outro so that if people want to head out, I just want to say a couple more things.
We'll conclude.
So PNSQC, if you like what you saw and you want to give a talk maybe yourself, we're looking for authors and speakers right now. We run on simplified academic papers and presentations for our annual conference in October. And This is a perfect opportunity to grow your professional development, especially if you are looking for work. We love having first-time authors and speakers, and you'll be working with like-minded colleagues through a peer paper review process. And you can grow your public speaking skills as well at the conference in a pretty casual yet very professional and supportive environment. And at the end, you'll be part of our archive of in PNSQC, which has it's a whole knowledge library that contains decades of software quality presentations and technical papers. So if this interests you, oh, and of course, free admission if you do this to our conference. If you're interested, we've got our call for papers up right now. It's just pnsqc.org/CFP. We're looking for submissions, and it's due in mid-April. All you have to do is put in like an abstract, a paragraph to start, and then you'll write your paper in the summertime. Also, as Heather briefly mentioned, we always are in need of more volunteers. These are a couple of different ideas for different things that we need. If volunteering sounds interesting to you, please let one of us know or reach out to us on our website, and we'd love to have you help with events like this. And I believe that's the last slide. So yes, thank you all for coming. Thank you again for Trimble for having us in this wonderful space. It's really high tech. I love it. So, and yeah, if you guys have more questions before we end the virtual part, are there any questions online, or good to end the virtual?
Do you have any tips for getting to the first interview? I guess the whole time we've been talking about that.
Yeah, have a good resume.
Well, if you do the things that both of Heather and I stated, then you will get that. The resume is the foot in the door to that right.
Yeah, and I've actually gotten a couple of first round interviews off of my resume this time around, off of cold resumes. I've gotten a couple more. If Sue Loth was talking tonight, she'd say work your network. The better I've gotten, my better hits off of my network. So,
ironically, I've only ever gotten jobs from cold resumes.
I've had both.
But yes, yeah. If you have a network, that can be very.
I actually got one job, actually during the 2008. I got to think about this for half a second. Oh, it was 2001. It was during the dot bomb. My resume floated in, and the guy saw that I had worked at a place called the Palace, and he knew somebody that had also worked there. So he reached out to that guy to say, "Hey, do you know Heather? Oh yeah, I know her. She's awesome. Hire her." That's how I got that job. So, work your tree and be a nice human being. Be that guy that everybody wants to recommend for a job.
Anything else online?
One thing that Brian that had the tip also posted on comments online that agrees with what you guys were saying was that the resume is used as a vehicle to get an interview. It's not to detail your full job history. So think of it that way, and that might be easier to simplify. Get the interview.
All right. Well, I'm gonna let people go online because we're past 8. I know people have other obligations to get to. So thank you again all for coming, and we'll see you next month. Hopefully, we're gonna do probably some talks about test automation in March. So, yep. Take care, everyone.
Come in.
Thank you.